Good day, my Telos Podcast friends. This is the Telos Podcast by Telos Writer. We have a really interesting show for you today. It is Rory Mapstone. He is from EZAR StableCoin that's on Telos. Today's show is sponsored by Spores, an audio, haptic, and kinetic puzzle box built by Hybrid.Games. Using sound, touch, and your phone's physical motions, you will learn how to unlock and collect unique digital items on the EOS blockchain. Visit Hybrid.Games to learn more. I am on the beta waiting list for Hybrid.Games. Looks pretty cool. Today, with Rory, we get into hyperinflation, how that actually looks on the ground in places like Africa. Also, what a stable coin built on Telos might be able to do to address some of those issues and kind of what the future looks like for money in general and a lot of different small communities using stable coins, interacting, and what that looks like. They are taking the first steps to develop this and hoping for some good adoption on Telos with the EZAR stablecoin. So let's just get into the show. I bring you Rory.
You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain.
The Telos Podcast.
You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Rory, welcome to the Telos Podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, great that you could have me on, and great to get the opportunity to share what's going on in Telos.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to meet you, Rory. And what do you think the most interesting thing going on in Telos right now is?
Well, the big news is our Telos economic plan, which is finally passed. And that's going to free up a lot of funds for developers, various initiatives in the community. So, you know, that's chain-wise, that's great. Like all of the other EOSI chains, we've got 1.8 coming along at some time in the future, which is sort of a scary upgrade. But that's more from the tech side. But the stuff that really excites me is building stuff that's user-facing.
Yes.
And, you know, I think certainly that's when I first ran into Telos. That was, you know, where the game changer for me was how awesome the user experience is when you start doing things on chain.
What was that transition like for you? I know that you started out with EOS.io software, EOS, and then came over to Telos. What was the thing that made you open your eyes to some opportunity?
Well, my sort of main background is a technical background. So my first encounter with EOS.io was on the tech side. Was involved in the early days, did the Hong Kong hackathon as a mentor. We did the London hackathon, and, you know, there you really sort of pick up the vibe of what's going on and you realize that this is something special. And then back in June, July last year, I'd sort of followed the Telos project, but we didn't really come on board until November last year. And I think, you know, it was part of that was we realized that if we'd sort of got technically involved with the block production on the early days of EOS, it would have been a good thing. And, you know, that opportunity passed us by. And Telos presented a second opportunity there. And so we got on board, started producing blocks, had a little bit of experience from the hackathons that we did in Hong Kong and London. And, you know, sort of over the 6 months, it started developing a vision on building a business out of EOS.io. And, you know, as things happened to turn out, it was more around Telos than the other chains.
And what block producer do you run or are you part of?
It's EOS South Africa.
Okay. And that's EOS South Africa, they're obviously part of the project that you started as well. Is it called the EZAR token? Is that how?
Yeah. The ZAR, ZAR or ZAR is the South African rand currency symbol. So we just had to do something, and a TZAR didn't seem to work that well. So, you know, you go through the various combinations, and that was the one that worked the best. So we wanted to sort of keep the association with the currency, but also just make it slightly different, and that's where we ended up.
Yeah. So how's that? You've created a stable token, and it's the first stable token on Telos. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's a domestic currency. Yeah, I mean, it's something that's needed in this region. I guess in the continent in general is the adoption of e-money in Africa is great, but generally you've got mobile networks controlling it and that sort of thing, central entities, and the opportunity with your EOS chains to do something decentralized and still give that good user experience is there. And I mean, obviously it's our home country. If we want to build stuff on Telos, that's one of the foundations that we need.
So what's you talked about there's digital money, and it's used through cell phone credits and things of that nature, is how I understand it. And phone companies control it. Can you talk about the current system and how that's been adopted, what that looks like?
The adoption isn't great on that sort of mobile money type stuff in South Africa. Mm-hmm. But we're relatively well banked. You know, it's a sort of fairly mature banking system here. But our neighbors in Zimbabwe, the financial systems collapsed, and I think someone told me earlier this week that if we talk about e-money, the biggest usage in the world is Zimbabwe. So, you know, the whole population's conditioned to work with, if we want to term it e-money as a general term, the country or the place in the world that most uses digital money of whatever form. And, you know, it's basically because the traditional financial institutions and that just can't support the people's needs. The economy collapsed in around about 2000, and since that date, they've been using the US dollar and South African rand for trade. And I mean, they go through cycles of serious liquidity problems. They've tried to relaunch their domestic currency again recently, and that's not really looking that successful. And then sort of generally across the continent, there's, you know, huge opportunities for blockchain, and I think this has sort of been identified by many people. Just the potential of getting people on board and getting people banked through blockchain that would typically be excluded from the normal financial systems. So yeah, I mean they're huge opportunities. It's not the sexy stuff, but it's the basic stuff that Bitcoin was originally launched to do, and we still need to do it well.
Yeah, you think about all the ideas and all the things that are launched, but there's this, talk about going to where your customer is. If the most used digital currency is already off blockchain right there in Zimbabwe, I mean, that's one of the most logical use cases. So I think that's a great idea. I just reached over and grabbed, I have one of these, from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, one of their $10 billion bills, just because I think that's such an interesting story of fiat and how, you know, over so many times over time we've seen fiat inflate and hyperinflate and become worthless, and then they try again. And something Zimbabwe is going through right now. I mean, it's part of our human history, kind of, to have that happen.
Yeah, and I mean, I had family up there around about that time, and you know, even with that sort of obscene number of zeros, people were still trading in what they called bricks, which was a bundle of notes tied together.
No kidding.
And you never bothered to count them because you know, you would arrive with a briefcase of bricks, and that would be the way you settle your account. So, you know, it's you have to sort of see pictures or be there to believe it. I mean, it's things that don't the normal sane mind wouldn't ever believe it. And I mean, I've seen things in other countries in Africa, not to that extent. I had a situation in Nigeria where we had to pay for a hotel bill in cash, and I ended up drawing, I think it was about 160,000 naira in 20,000 naira batches. So you put your ATM card in, you draw 20,000 naira, you put it in your pocket, and you just keep going on until eventually your card gets blocked.
Wow.
And then you arrive at the hotel with a pile of notes this high. So it's things that if you've seen it and you've experienced that sort of stuff, you realize how awesome it is to be able to have access to stable currencies. And even if we look at things like USD on blockchain and that sort of stuff, it really can change people's lives.
Yeah. Just imagine the friction of just for a hotel room, which some places is common, but in some places it's hard because it's so. I can't imagine going to ATM and standing there for 15 minutes pulling money out to just you can pay for a hotel room. That's wild.
Yeah, and I've done it. So got the T-shirt.
Yeah. So right now, the places like Zimbabwe, the people are using their phone credits on their telephone. That's an interesting one because that's tied to some sort of intrinsic, there's some sort of value there. Hypothetically, they could use these to actually make phone calls as well, right? Yeah,
it's basically an e-money layer that runs through the phone services. So it's sort of essentially a stable coin. It's that sort of concept. But it uses the old USSD codes to do the transfers and that sort of stuff. So I don't know if you're familiar with star hash. You used to be able to do it to credit your airtime and all of those things. So there's whole economies around it's sort of keyboard shortcuts. And it's driven through the signaling networks on the mobile phones.
So what would you say the main drawbacks with the system that's been adopted there are, and how does cryptocurrency or your stablecoin specifically fit in?
Yeah, I think the one thing, and it's sort of the question that's sort of crossed my mind as to why that tech hasn't been successful in South Africa. And I think probably the biggest differentiator of blockchain over that tech is blockchain becomes borderless. So if you're going to use the Zimbabwe e-money solution, you need to be in country. You need to be on the mobile network that supports it. There's a lot of cross-border. We've probably got a million Zimbabwean residents living in South Africa, working here, sending money back, and this is sort of a common pattern across the whole of Africa. You've got Kenyans can legally work in Uganda, and there's a lot of movement between countries. People going to work centers, working there, and we don't we're just not able to police our borders. So there's sort of far more freedom of movement, although it's not, there's an ugly side to it as well. And foreigners aren't really treated great in the host countries and that, but certainly one of their biggest problems is sort of being able to open bank accounts. Even trading domestically, it becomes difficult. So they end up working with cash, even if they're here legally and they have all their papers. It's not easy to become part of the formal financial system for these sort of people.
So do you see blockchain as an entryway into the global economy, or a way to maybe even just skip being banked in the traditional way, but still plug into the global economy?
Yeah, I think it is. I did a bit of sort of research when we were looking at the stablecoin just to see what our Reserve Bank attitude was towards this, and it was relatively supportive. And the thing that I figured there is that if you as a national as a country have a stable currency running inside of your country, obviously your exit and entry points are in country, but it really extends your economy outside of the borders. So if your currency is being used in blockchain transactions in Botswana or Malawi or whatever, it's sort of almost extended the economy of South Africa into those regions. So it's not, when you start thinking of it like that, it helps enormously with liquidity. It's a real win for the countries that are hosting the currency that's being widely used. So there are a lot of positives as to why it would be supported.
And stability, the stability and having, like you're saying, a little bit of a network effect with neighboring countries starts to give the economy a real boost as well, it would seem, with the stable dollar. So what you're basically doing, and then is the South Africa rand based stable token. So you're pegging 1-to-1 with the rand, and the EZAR is backed by fiat that's held in a reserve by EOS South Africa. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, it's held by we have a party that can hold it in trust for us.
Okay.
So indirectly through us, but we basically place it with a trusted authority, and then we'll see if it grows. We might have to spread that as well.
Mm-hmm. And what's it look like? What's the legal landscape look like for something like that? And what's the country of South Africa, the government, think of something like that?
As I said, in some ways there's support. There's a lot of from a legal point of view, a lot of policy is still being developed. So it's not really that well defined. And even something like this, depending on whether it's a coupon or a voucher or whatever it is, it doesn't fit neatly into a box. But I think the important thing is that whatever is done has the credibility and doesn't, anyone that participates doesn't get burnt. Mm-hmm. So it's the protection of the party that buys the token at the end of the day. That's important, and that's going to be the litmus test.
Yeah, looking at it from a high level, as long as a stable coin like the EZAR is showing accounting and backing up, so that if people want out, they can get fiat back out, then it seems like it's just a layer on top of money, helping the money move around, as opposed to some sort of it makes sense just logically. You're doing a service logically. So
yeah. And I think, in that sense, there's, and I think it's sort of true across the whole world, is that there's a lot of fear about blockchain and the change that it's going to bring, but it's also inevitable. This stuff's going to happen, and that's sort of the view that we took, because over the last 6 months or so, we've built the tech and we did some testing, and it all looked great. And then there was sort of a couple of technical hurdles that we were really struggling with. And then about a week or two ago, I managed to sort of nail those down. And then I thought, well, let's get it out there, because once you put it out there, you start engaging with people that are interested in sort of helping join the project and that sort of stuff. And, even with the discussions that I had over the course of the day, there's interest from the guys in Ghana and in Kenya. And, I'm quite happy to share what we've done to get them up and running. Whether we participate or not is not a big deal to me, as long as I benefit anyway if it makes Telos an awesome blockchain. So, I'm happy to contribute just to have a better blockchain.
So do you think that, as you picture things developing, do you see places like Ghana and Kenya having their own fiat-backed stable coin, or do you see them possibly using the EZAR?
I think they will have their own. It's still, and even the South African rand isn't really a stable coin by European and US standards, but all your local pricing is based on that currency. So it's difficult to work with US dollars if I think we've had a 8% change in rand dollar over the past half year. That's sort of for ordinary folk to have the prices going up and going down by 10% in 6 months is a lot. So there is that need to have something that sort of relates to the local economy when it comes to buying a coffee or something like that. I'm happy to pay rands. I get it cheaper anyway than you would do if you paid dollars.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is kind of a fix for that pain point of having to carry around bricks of money. The currency can still stay inflated, or the currency can still stay local and used in the same way it is. You're just being able to account on a blockchain and taking away that friction of carrying around big sets of big
yeah. And I mean, that's, it sort of surprised me when if you look at East and West Africa, the interest from there. But I guess it's sort of, if you live in that economy, then you relate to your own domestic currency. You're used to a devaluing currency over time. So, it's part of life. And everyone trades using the same medium, so it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And specifically in South Africa, where you're at and where the rand is, what's this state of the currency, and how's the daily life paying in fiat in South Africa?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, it's not bad. We have our currency has devalued over the last 6 months, but generally over the last, let's say, 5 years, it's been relatively stable. I mean, we've had periods where it's been more unstable than this, and we've got credit card, debit card payments are well developed here. So if you're a banked individual, there isn't a problem accessing banking services and that sort of stuff. Cash is readily available through ATMs, so it's not that difficult to get by. But I think there is a convenience factor. Even here we have sort of migrant workers, so people moving to the cities to do work, and having families back in rural areas electronic money and being able to just send something to your mother is a lot more convenient than traditional banking systems, and fiat just doesn't work. Or, I mean, banknotes just don't work. So, you can see, as long as it's easy enough for people to use, there's a use case.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, this money is going towards an electronic form. That is becoming a one-way street. That's not, doesn't look like we're going back towards any sort of fiat currencies. And in the US, I just saw an announcement that the Federal Reserve by 2022 or 2023 is going to make instant electronic transfers. Right now it takes 2 or 3 days to move money around through the bank, but the Fed is basically saying what it basically looks like is some sort of blockchain technology where they're instantly transferring money electronically. So even governments, even the US dollar is going towards some sort of electronic currency. So this is definitely the future.
Yeah, I mean, and they have to, it's whether even the Fed has to stay current with technology. Otherwise, people are, if it's too primitive and blockchain becomes too good, then people will move off. And it's the genie's out of the bottle. You can't stop this thing. You need to basically innovate to remain relevant.
Yeah, kind of the interesting shift that we have with blockchain is that now money has become a free market competition where people can come and say that this transfers value better, and why do we need to use this or that? So yeah, like you're saying, I mean, it's even more important for the Fed now to not only innovate, but innovate quickly, because now they have a lot of competition out there. So
yeah, and I think, I mean, the thing with blockchain, it's often been bashed because of the sort of criminal element of it, but things like EOSIO, it's all public. It's you are accountable for what you do with your blockchain account. The stuff's on the blockchain, and individuals become accountable for their taxes and that sort of stuff. But if whoever the authority is, if they take the time to look, you're not going to hide it. Obviously, it's a different discussion if we start talking about the privacy stuff, but just regular blockchain is public. And I think it does place limitations on what you can do, because as a major retailer, I probably wouldn't want my bank accounts public. So to buy the odd coffee and do small trade with blockchain makes sense, but there is if it starts affecting the majority of your business, there is probably need for some sort of privacy solution, just for good business practice. It's got nothing to do with trying to do illegal stuff.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's the future. We need to get to first base.
Yeah, and first base right now is these steps like you're doing with the stable token. So the EZAR has a wallet as well. Did your team develop the wallet, and where'd that come from?
Well, they basically two separate initiatives, but we're building the wallet sort of, if there are particular features that we want to be able to offer with the EZAR or any other token, we're going to purpose build that wallet to support those functions. Basically, the background of the wallet, we started developing probably sort of March time, when there was just, there were mobile wallets available on EOSIO, but nothing was supporting Telos. And we decided, well, if we're staking what we're doing on Telos, we need to sort of either contribute and get something out there, or it's going to be a major problem for the chain. And since then, I mean, we've got some awesome wallets that have come along. So it's really lifted what was sort of a real limitation on the blockchain. But by that point, we'd gone so far down the road, we decided that we might as well just continue and do this and have an app that we can customize to our specific use case. But again, as I said, it's from a blockchain perspective, the more wallets we have, the better.
Yeah. Are you planning to integrate with other wallets down the road?
Yeah, I think most people have sort of developed their own tech, so it's not. We can look at how sort of wallets share their addresses and things like that to make transfers between wallets easy. But we've sort of done our own thing. The guys at Links have done their own thing. Just thinking of each one is so every wallet vendor's sort of gone their own path in terms of the QR code scanning and that sort of stuff. And maybe over time there is a standard that develops and everyone migrates towards that. But you can also, the beauty of Telos is these 12 letter accounts. You can type them in and it's not a big deal. If you choose a good account name, then you can speak to someone and they get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's I think that's sort of, if we just sort of take a step back to the obstacles around Bitcoin, to explain to people what a public key is, and that this public key is your Bitcoin account. It's quite a challenging thing to get through to people. And a lot of these third generation chains, what they're doing is they're simplifying this for the user. And I think the second area that needs to simplify it is the apps need to get better. So we need to just have apps where you're not worried about your keys. They're kept safe. You have nice methods of backing stuff up that is secure. And, we'll get there. But you get there by people using the blockchain and pointing out the deficiencies.
Yeah, I saw it's called the COOLX wallet. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw on the COOLX wallet that for a new account, you could create an account, make up a 12-letter key, and then essentially start transferring money. I mean, it was like a 3-step process. Looked really simple. How did you handle the UX for that? How's the key stored, and what's that look like?
Yeah, the key's stored in the secure storage on the device, which is sort of the same as most of your other wallets. Like that whole user experience was actually driven by Roger from UK, Telos UK, and he kept on insisting that this needs to be simple. And we had these layers in where we wanted to verify who was creating the account and that sort of stuff. And you sort of, eventually we went with his recommendation, and yeah, as my experience, it actually worked better than expected. There were some issues with abuse of, creating multiple free accounts, and we've made efforts to shut that down. The potential gain, if you create a free account, and what was happening, they were selling the RAM, you basically get $1 US out of the whole process. So, it seems like a brainless exercise, but there's people that have got enough time to waste that they'll do that. But, at the end of the day, we end up with a better product if we fix those sort of things. And then, just to take a step back, where the free accounts come from is when Telos was launched. Part of the launch plan was to dedicate, I think it's around about 1 million Telos, to creating free accounts for whoever wants to come on board. So that account is being funded out of that Telos Foundation free account. It's a smart contract that allows whitelisted apps to create free accounts when they onboard users. And I think just also getting back to the chain, any other dApps that want to come onto the chain and are worried about getting users onto the chain, that's available to any dApp that wants to come to Telos.
Yeah, that's a cool feature of Telos, the idea that they nurture new dApps, and they make the barrier to entry a lot easier. You're part of the Telos Foundation as well, is that right?
Yeah. That's been a learning experience. I come from, my background as sort of small to medium enterprises, so no corporate background, and then you're ending up in an environment that sort of, I guess, it's a bunch of individuals with similar backgrounds, but you're trying to operate as a board, which is sort of something that works in a corporate environment. Plus, you sort of distributed over all of the continents, so it's been a challenge just to learn to work with people from different cultures. But we've got to know each other over the past couple of months, and it's starting to work well now. I guess it's always going to be challenging to create some sort of organizational structure and get it up and running from zero. If you look at company boards, you don't start with a completely new, fresh board. It's always there's some institutional memory. And we've got to a point now where there is 6 months worth of institutional memory, if we want to call it that. And then there's obviously some of the folk are from the original Telos launch team, so they have a couple of extra months working together. But if nothing else, a great learning experience, and great to just meet people from diverse backgrounds.
And what would you say what's the North Star or the main goal of the Telos Foundation?
I mean, the founding principle was to promote the chain. So it's a bit vague. Essentially what's happened, and it's just because of the way things panned out on Telos, is a lot of the responsibility fell around getting the token listed on various exchanges. And, particularly in the early days when we weren't listed on anything. So that's still a fairly high priority. And then there's a lot of effort going in now and sort of getting our ducks into a row in terms of a decent marketing message, presenting a sort of go-to point for anyone that wants to speak to the chain. So, it's a single point of contact that, particularly when you start talking to businesses, and that it's difficult to speak to a business when you claim to be a decentralized entity or a decentralized network. I mean, they just don't understand it. So it's somewhere in between having a formal structure and it is still pretty decentralized, but at least it's a entity that we can point to and say, well, speak to the foundation. And the foundation connects. Most of the participants do have some role in the block producer community as well. So, it does, the connections do happen through sort of people having roles across block production, Telos Foundation, and whatever their private initiatives are.
Mm-hmm. And what's your background, or what were you doing before you dove into EOS.io software?
I had a business. We did big data in telcos, so mobile operators. So, really big databases like 5 billion rows a day. They allowed you simultaneous query and loads. And it sort of went into sort of data mining for marketing, technical troubleshooting, fraud prevention, all sorts of things like that. But we did that back in sort of close to 2000, and that was leading edge back then. I think sort of in the late 2008, 2009, somewhere around there, we were running the largest, you call it commercial, Oracle database at one of the US mobile phone companies. But I mean, that stuff now, what was really bleeding edge 10 years ago is commodity now. You can do that. What probably took a $10 million budget then, you can do for $200,000 today. So, it's the opportunities in that space have gone. If we sort of look at our typical S-curve, we've sort of up at the top there where it's plateauing. Mm-hmm. So we exited that business the middle of last year, and we decided, well, blockchain is the next thing.
Where do you think we are on that S-curve in blockchain, as far and kind of relating to what you saw in the, being bleeding edge of that previous industry?
Very early days. I mean, the adoption, it's, if you hang around blockchain people, you think that it's so cool and everyone does this. And then you go and you speak to ordinary folk and you realize that most people have heard about Bitcoin, and a few people have heard about Ethereum. And then you start talking about these other projects and their eyes just glaze over. Mm-hmm. So, it's exciting, but we're right down at the bottom of the curve. So whoever's involved now is sort of building the foundations for the future.
What do you think a timeline looks like for, let's say, things like stable currency, something that you're working on, for that to be more commonplace, or for people to be really familiar with mobile phone wallets for cryptocurrency and what stable coins are and things like that?
Yeah, I think the barrier for stable coins isn't that great because people are already familiar with electronic money, and there's sort of blockchain has this aura about it that it's better and cooler than a regular centralized database. I don't think people always get the significance of the fact that you are custodian of your keys, so you actually control the funds, and it's not something that it's censorship resistant, so it's not something that a central authority can mess with. But it works and it's sexy, and as particularly with the stable coin, it's easy to understand how businesses would be prepared to accept that if they can convert it into fiat easily, and it's just another form of payment. And I think it's necessary for blockchain to go through this before other tokens can sort of gain a decent level of acceptance. Most cryptocurrency is still speculative at this point.
Yeah, that does seem like the logical step when we're talking about blockchain being used as a currency and things like that. It's so speculative that the logical step for people to actually use this in businesses is clearly stablecoins. That's clearly a step there, yeah.
And it might be a sort of phase that we go through, and in 2 years' time, it's sort of commonplace, and some of these have survived, and others have sort of failed or been absorbed into bigger players. But I mean, we saw, even if you look at the history of USDT, I think what are they, 4 or 5 years old now? Mm-hmm. There's sort of a couple of competitors that have come up that are reasonably credible, and I guess 1 or 2 will emerge and be the dominant players over time, and the others will just fall into disuse or be absorbed at some point in time into the bigger players. But at the end of the day, blockchain wins if this stuff succeeds.
Absolutely. What do you think that looks like maybe 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road as kind of winners emerge in the stablecoin area? Do you see each nation having their own stablecoin, individual countries, communities, or do you see maybe a more of like a global couple stablecoins?
I think there's always that sort of domestic currency has a lot of value, and I mean, even I've looked at sort of models around local currencies and how they interact with the national currency and that sort of stuff, and you see that these local currencies are really important for liquidity and keeping nations' economies going. So they always play a role, even if you have 1 or 2 global currencies that dominate at a global level. There's this place to do trade locally, even when none of the locals have when that local currency is no longer in circulation in a particular region. So that's what these models around local currencies show, and I'm sure with national currencies is basically the same holds true.
Yeah, I like the idea of, I talked to Eyal Herzog from Bancor or Liquid. He talks about every community having its own, or every network, he calls it, every network having its own currency or its own way to trade and create value. And that's a cool way to picture it for me, because even all these small networks, even small communities have different norms, different ways that they trade and barter and spend money and trade value. And so being able to cater the experience down to such a micro level it makes sense. It makes sense. We as operated in small bands for forever, so.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Bancor stuff. And, when the sort of conversation opened with the guys in East Africa and West Africa, I was sort of thinking, well, what do you do if you've got these stable coins? And probably the most obvious thing is to put Bancor as a swap mechanism between them. And each will find its own level, and your tokenized currency won't necessarily be 100% aligned with the paper currency in the country. But that doesn't really matter. I mean, the premium that people pay on one side or the other side of the relationship is because that's the movement is, for instance, out of one currency and into the other. Where at the moment they're sort of artificial barriers, just because you can't transfer between currencies. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of the combination of stable coins and Bancor becomes so frictionless.
It's an exciting future to think about. As we start to wind down here, feel free to hit on any final points you'd like to, covering the EZAR or the COOLX wallet. But what I'd like to know kind of as a final, what's the roadmap look like for the next year to 2 years for the stablecoin?
Yeah, I mean, we were sort of surprised by the reception. So we'll probably spend the next couple of days sort of reprioritizing what we're doing, and we'll put more effort into sort of making that great. But my vision is to be able to go and buy a cup of coffee with my crypto. And, when I can do that, we've arrived. So if we have to build the wallet to allow us to do that, or if we have to do the integration with a point of sales, we'll do that. If someone else does it, that'll be great. But ultimately we need an end-to-end experience. We're not going to hit mass adoption if people, it's like that $1 billion or $1 trillion note on your desk. It's a novelty thing. Your crypto in your phone wallet is a novelty thing until you can go out and do something simple like buy your coffee or pay at the retailer, or those sort of things. So I think that's our goal, is to make this something that people can use on a day-to-day basis, and we'll sort of focus on our region because this is what we understand. But it's it's something that does apply more generally as well. I mean, the requirements are very similar across the whole world. Even in well-developed countries, it's cool to have something on your phone, and it's a conversation starter and that sort of stuff. So make it a bit of fun, not do stuff that's too formal. So sort of keep it something exciting. But at the end of the day, I'll post a pic when I buy my first coffee with the COOLX wallet.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the point of sale situation look like on the business end? Have you seen any projects that have made any inroads developing some sort of logical point of sale system for businesses?
Not really. I'm sure there are guys out there doing stuff, but I haven't sort of researched it. There's some cool stuff sort of in the formal banking space that's sort of used the crypto ideas in regular banking. So linking a credit card to an app that scans a QR code. So maybe there are opportunities to speak to guys like that and sort of integrate the crypto side into their broader network, that would be great. And then to speak to the small point of sales guys that are running at small retailers and that sort of stuff, where you're not, it's not trying to convince a massive corporate that this is cool. I spent my telco days dealing with big companies. It's nice to deal at the other end.
Absolutely. Yeah, it would be, I wonder if a logical integration someday, if there was quality stable coins, so it made sense for companies to accept some sort of crypto, in integration with something like Stripe, like integration with point of sale systems that are already really common. And now all of a sudden, everyone who has the Apple Stripe or the Stripe Pay at their business, now it has a little icon where it accepts the EZAR or something like that is a one way we could see it happen. But it's also interesting to think about how many banks and how many established businesses are starting to adopt parts of blockchain and crypto technology. And it's almost like on one end, the established businesses are kind of watering down crypto and taking parts of it and adding it to business models. And then there's the crypto that is just all, that's starting from the ground up. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah.
I mean, the biggest thing that crypto brought was sort of wide use of cryptography. And whether that's, the trustless money transfer is a great use case, but just being able to have an identity that's tied to a private key and you're the only one that can sign it. So I think that really revolutionizes IT systems. It's a better design pattern to use. And this is sort of the message that's come out of the guys from Block One and that sort of stuff as well. So, it's saying we shouldn't be having our credentials on a central server. You need to have your credentials on your mobile device. And I think that's where, if you look at blockchain and how it's going to affect business, whether it's blockchain or just the way that blockchain uses the cryptography, I think that's really where things are going to change in a big way.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time today, Rory. This has been a really interesting talk. I love hearing about money, stable coins, just the theory of money, how it moves, where things are going. This is a really, really killer topic. And I look forward to seeing what the EZAR does on Telos. Any final thoughts? And then where can people find you or find out more or follow the progress?
Yeah, it's sort of great to chat. I won't claim to be an expert economist or anything like that, but certainly we're passionate about building stuff that looks like the obvious things that blockchain should be doing. And then to contact us, I dip in and out of the Telos community channel on Telegram occasionally. We've got a Telegram channel for our block producer that we don't really look after as well as we could, but the COOLX wallet, if you just follow the support link in the app, it'll take you to our wallet support channel and you'll be able to reach me there. Or the EZAR, we've got the same thing. We've created a Telegram channel. So that's sort of the obvious easy things if you want to contact us directly. We have a website and sort of a traditional email, and all the links are on there. But this crypto space, it seems like the whole world revolves around Telegram. So that's where most of the action happens. So yeah, probably the best place to look for us. My Telegram is my name. It's simple.
Great. I will put your Telegram in the show notes just in case, or your name will be obviously there, so people will be able to find you by your name and Telegram. And community channel, the Telos community channel is a fantastic channel. If you're not in it and you're listening to this podcast, it's a good spot to be. That's how I saw Rory. That's how I saw your project pop up. Justin from Infinity Block, who's active in the community channel, mentioned it. And then I went through the community channel and saw a lot of discussion about it. Telos community channel is a great spot to find out what's new, what's going on. And so yeah, check that out. And also there's Telos worker proposal channel. If you are interested in getting a Telos worker proposal for some sort of project, something you're working on that will benefit Telos, then pop into that Telos worker proposal system channel and see all the other talk that's going on there, see what other people are up to. And you can get some pointers on how to apply for your own worker proposal. This podcast is a Telos worker proposal. So that's what it's funded by. So that's how I got a new camera. I think just to chip in on the worker proposal side, I mentioned at the start that our Telos development plan had been passed. And I think there the funds going into worker proposals will be around about 1 million Telos a month. So, you know, we're looking for good quality projects and a little bit of competition between the projects so that we get good value for that Telos that's being spent. So, yeah, it's an appeal generally to any projects that are sort of keen on doing something on an EOSI chain to come over and build on Telos. Yeah, the more projects the more competition, the better as far as projects building on Telos goes. It makes the whole ecosystem better. And it's so cool to see that worker proposal system actually functioning. I was skeptical about it. I was with the EOS main chain. I was not a big fan of having a worker proposal system because it seemed like such a big experiment. Seeing how it's functioning so far on Telos has been eye-opening for me. I mean, some of the development that's been getting done, some of the projects that are out there, it's driving a lot of innovation and rewarding people for participating in the community. And right now it's a self-sustaining blockchain, and it's been really impressive to me. So I've been stoked to be doing this podcast and be learning a bunch more about Telos over the last few months here. I've been diving pretty deep. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great for us to be able to support this podcast. And, I guess as the community, we can be proud to see this sort of stuff happening, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a cool spot to be. I think Telos is gaining some momentum and a lot of great projects popping up. So exciting times. And that's the point of this podcast, is so people can dig deep. I think this is episode number 7 now, Rory. So we're getting some content out there, and people have something to go back and see kind of what's going on when they want to. So
yeah, no, it's awesome. I've watched a few of your shows. I've missed some of them, so I need to get back and watch them. But yeah. I mean, it's such a busy space to be in. There's so much to do. If you just want to get involved and build, this is such an exciting space, eh?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on the Telos podcast, Rory. Really look forward to watching your project develop. We'll probably bring you back on the show in a few months and see where you're at. And my Telos podcast friends, thank you for listening. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks.
The money is not the prime asset in life. Time is.